Hello everyone, Marcus here, and I just want to do a quick little video covering the news that came out of Oculus's presentation today on June 11th, 2015. So, for my overall thoughts just before I get into the whole news, well, actually, allow me to just let the quick little image or posted right after the conference speak for itself. Yeah, this is probably going to be filled with a little bit of, how should I put it? Negativity! Yeah, let's just go with that. Pessimism. That's the right word. Yeah. But anyhow, yeah, today Oculus took the time to hold a press briefing to announce a few things in regards to the Oculus CV1, or maybe we should just properly call it the Oculus Rift, as a product at this point. So, what did they announce? For one, we finally gotten to see the complete and utter form factor of the device. No more images just showing a few little glancing shots of the device. No, we have some pretty good visualizations of what this thing is supposed to look like. And so far, I'm honestly kind of positive on this one. I mean, it's not the most elegant or beautiful thing in the world, and truth be told, I actually think the Sony Morpheus is still the best looking virtual reality headset out there. But in regards to functionality, this thing definitely seems like it's going to be filling that need, and I'm actually curious about the edging and ergonomics of this device when it's finally worn, because with my with my dev kit 2, if I wear it for long periods of time, you can actually see a small red mark right above my nose, now showing where the DK2 connected with my face. So I'm actually kind of hoping to see that this is rectified with the CV1, so that people will feel a little bit more comfortable wearing this thing for long periods of time. Another nice thing is that they've announced that we have eye interpolary distance modulation here. So for those of you that don't know what that is, I meant interpupillary correction. Interpupillary distance is effectively the distance between your pupils in regards to the lenses in the display. This might not seem all that relevant, but when it comes to virtual reality, the slight offset of your IP in regards to the virtual content can be a bit of a bother and immersion breaking, so it's preferable to have a way to properly modulate this for each individual user on the fly, rather than having to deal with it in software or just plain old having a single locked situation, which is definitely a negative. If it's for this reason that the Oculus CV1 has two split screens instead of a singular one, I can definitely see why, since it'd be a lot easier just to physically move the screens a little slightly in regards to the IP instead of having to deal with software solutions. But at the same time, I'm actually kind of worried about what that's going to mean for making sure the device is completely stable, because a little bit of an offset can create a bit of a problem. So I'm just worried that that might end up being problematic in the future for longevity if people constantly have to keep switching their IPs. But yeah, aside from that, they've also got a pair of headphones. I don't really care for them all that much. I'm going to take those off immediately and just put on some Audio Technicas instead. But whatever, at least it comes with something. And in the note of things that this device will be coming with, I want to get onto the big news in this actual conference. Yep, Xbox controller, or the Xbox One controller for that matter. It seems that Microsoft is playing its hand into virtual reality too now. They've partnered up with Oculus Facebook at this point, and are going to be providing several benefits in this relationship for the Oculus company and virtual reality. For one, we're going to be having an Xbox One controller of the wireless variety along with an adapter for PCs bundled with every single Oculus unit that is released out into the wild. That's definitely a big positive in regards to having a standardized input solution, so that we developers have an idea as to what it's supposed to be, what we're supposed to be using, really. And it actually kind of works out really well for me, since I actually already have an Xbox controller. I'm not too sure about the specific differences between the Xbox One and Xbox 360 controllers, but based on my observations, they shouldn't really be all that significant for the most part. So yeah, nice to see that we have a standardized input system that most developers are used to at this point. And aside from that, we also got the other input solution here, the Oculus Touch. I'll go into this a little bit later, just like they kept talking about going into it later during the actual press conference. But yeah, aside from that, we also received some good news in regards to Windows integration with the Oculus Suite. it seems that Windows 10 will be heavily supporting virtual reality within its basic software, and they're working very hard with Oculus in order to make sure that whatever software we're running in virtual reality will be in the best possible condition it can be within the Windows 10 platform. I'm actually kind of curious as to whether or not this had any effect or impact on the reasons why Oculus decided to discontinue or shelve, per se, their development on Linux and OS X, because I'd imagine that if they got into bed with Microsoft, for lack of a better term, they would probably not want to be too open with the other platforms, at the very least at this immediate moment, since it would probably kind of look in a negative light towards the partnership that they currently have with Microsoft, but that could just be a little bit of paranoia going on right there. And aside from that, they also talked up DirectX 12's benefits on the PC platform. I'm going to admit this is probably going to be a bit more on the developer side of things, but based on my observations, DirectX 12 will play a significant role in the PC gaming future, since it heavily improves the API for interacting with game engines and visualizations on our systems, and should increase draw calls in particular and CPU-related features by up to 30 to 40%, if not more, which is a definite boon for games that have lots of objects running around on screen. And I can imagine that games like Assassin's Creed Unity would probably run considerably better, since they'd be better able to take advantage of the draw calls within the system. But then again, a broken game will still be a broken game, even if said game is Tetris. Well, aside from that, they also announced another interesting little feature here. We're actually going to be able to stream Xbox games within the system towards our items. Here, I'm going to go to the Twitch stream really quickly and skip around to the part where Microsoft CEO showed up and tried discussing the matter. Pardon my internet connection, things might be a little bit slow, but let me see if I can move a little forward. Can't quite recall the exact point. I've only watched this around once or twice. First time technically wasn't watched, more of a podcast-like thing, since driving to work, can't really watch a podcast while driving unless I want to get into an accident. I hope you understand. But yeah, essentially what they announced was that they would have integration with the Xbox One platform via the benefits of Windows 10 inside of the system. For those of you wondering, Windows 10 is supposed to have a significant improvement in regards to interactivity between it and the Xbox Live platform. Here we have the CEO. So essentially the idea is we're going to be able to play games from the Xbox platform on our PCs via streaming, and they've decided to integrate this even further into the Oculus Suite by creating an almost cinema-like experience, whereby we're going to be able to enjoy virtual reality or regular games inside of a virtual room along with our friends, possibly, in front of a screen. This kind of reminds me of some of the things I see occasionally in some of the current VR demos, whereby you can walk up to a game and play a game inside of a game. And one of this particular demo I remember from the first development kit, where the point was you're supposed to be playing a game inside of a game, and having the game's features within the game affect your virtual game experience, and in turn kind of scare you in real life. That probably just sounded like a confusing mess, but this is the kind of stuff that happens when you play video games within video games within video games, and have video games affect levels of video games. Here's the footage I was just mentioning. In this case, the person has a virtualized room that they can experience. As the experience is going on here in the display, they can play around with the game using the Xbox controller, and still be able to enjoy the experience, even though it's not designed for virtual reality. Although, that kind of does make me a little bit curious as to whether or not we're going to be seeing some Xbox One games being developed with virtual reality features in mind, and being able to detect whether or not they're being played on the Windows platform and offering up a toggle or something. Do you wish to play in Oculus mode or regular mode? A few VR games already do this, and I kind of enjoy the options right there. So I'm just kind of curious as to whether or not they're going to be using this as another way to improve the reach of virtual reality as a platform. Because aside from the mobile VR, which I'm relatively positive will have some decent reach thanks to the amount of effort Samsung's been putting into things, as well as the sheer simplicity of Google Cardboard as a platform, I'm also kind of excited to see that the consoles aren't necessarily being left out in the dry here. I mean, Sony has their whole Morpheus product going, and everyone's wondering whether or not Microsoft will get in on this pie. Well, it seems they have, and they've gone straight to the head honcho of Oculus. And it's probably a pretty smart move since their platform is Windows and Xbox kind of working together. So it just seems like a relatively reasonable decision on Microsoft's part. So, yeah, aside from that, the other news that kind of caught my eye was that Oculus announced that they're going to be providing $10 million to support indie development efforts in the virtual reality field. It's kind of nice to see that the big players are trying to put some more money into getting virtual reality content out there, especially considering how much the content that is being produced for virtual reality is going to be playing a factor on its adoption at this early point in time. So it's just a good thing to hear that we're getting $10 million, although considering Facebook has really deep pockets, it doesn't really seem like all that much. But hey, money is money. You shouldn't complain about getting a lot of free money. And lastly, I just want to go over two more things, mainly the Oculus Home platform and the Touch platform before going into my thoughts at the end of this. Oculus Home is supposed to be a feature set or a kind of layer within Windows or a software application that allows you to just use your Xbox controller or your input device with the Oculus and interact with all your virtual reality software in a smooth and transition-free or smoothly transition to form factor. This is a really big thing right now, in my opinion, because at this moment in time, most Oculus demos that I have to deal with will involve me opening up the folder, looking for my Oculus file, clicking on the Oculus folder or the Oculus icon, then putting on my headset, waiting for it to load with the Unity screen, and in particular, I kind of find it annoying that the Unity splash screen is in 2D, which shows up ugly as heck on the Oculus Rift. It just makes it look like you just see two things, and it gives you double vision. I just end up closing my eyes and waiting for like the brightness of the screen to pop up again or change in any form of way, so that I know to open up my eyes just to smooth out the transition, because the transitions right now are just quite frankly horrible and clearly show that it is not ready for prime time and consumer versions. But yeah, it's just kind of nice to see that, and it's also cool to see that you're going to be able to experiment with virtual reality software demos in virtual reality. So it's pretty cool that you'll be able to download a demo or a demo scene and try it out and experience it firsthand rather than just simply having to watch a 2D video. And that's one of the things that I think virtual reality suffers from heavily at this point in time, because there just are so few applications. Until you try a device, you will not know how great it is. And likewise, until you try VR software, you will not know how good it is until you experience it. So having an in-virtual reality method of experiencing all this software just sounds like a plain old great solution on the part of Oculus. I'm also kind of curious as to whether or not this Oculus Home platform will have any more developer applications, as to whether or not we're going to be able to customize it, create software for it, or whether or not we're going to have any control over anything that goes on in there at all. Perhaps they're going to have any advertising or something else like that. I mean, after all, they've already said that eventually VR ads will come, although we can't really be too whiny about that, because, guys, if it exists, there will be ads on it. Make that an extension to the internet rules along with 34 and 69. And lastly, the last thing I want to talk about here is the Oculus Touch controller that they've developed. We can see it here in its half-moon looking thing. Yeah. I'll go into this in my thoughts, but yeah, essentially it's a form of mixture. It's kind of like a nunchuck if you look at it closely. It has a trigger or several trigger features, as well as an IR tracking ring, so you can be able to visualize this. Although this is supposedly a prototype, still, it's not completely ready for prime time. Based on what I'm seeing, it probably won't even be released in time for the CV1 release, which again has not been completely confirmed. It's still just Q1 or Q1 of 2016. But essentially, it has a couple of buttons here and there, as well as an analog trigger and the trigger right back there. You can see right there the other one that's ancillary to it. Nothing really all that special to remark about here. Well then, everyone, so I'm pretty sure you guys are wondering at this point what my thoughts are. I already showed you the image at the beginning, just showing that I'm relatively down on this. But why am I down on it? I mean, we got a bunch of great news, and in all honesty, the Xbox news genuinely surprised me, and I'm relatively optimistic on that end. but I suppose I should just get into this real quickly and stop stalling. The biggest things that kind of have me worried at this point are the lack of any in-depth information for all of us here in the development community in regards to the CV1 specifications from a direct standpoint. I mean, we already know that it's supposedly going to be a 1200 by 12 light correction, 1080 by 2160. In other words, actually, I keep getting this resolution wrong. It's always tricky because of the HTC Vive and Oculus. But effectively, it's going to be, now I know, 1200 by 2160, while by comparison, the HTC Vive will be 1080 by 2400. Wider on one is wider, one is taller. But yeah, we still haven't really gotten Oculus just straight up mentioning those numbers right there. I kind of understand it from a PR perspective. The resolution doesn't really sound too good on paper. But at the same time, it's just a little disappointing to see them pussyfooting around the area so much. I just kind of want them to own the decision that they made. It's basically, this is how it is, let's live up to it. But it feels almost as though they're kind of hiding from that, and I'm not really digging it all that much. In addition, the rebranding of their IR tracking system to Constellation sounds kind of cool. But when you really think about it, all they're effectively saying is that they're still just a bunch of IR trackers and we're using that to track things. I'm kind of curious that they mention that they may be used to track other things, although at the same time I'm wondering whether or not they just mean you're going to be able to plop on a bunch of trackers onto something and you'll be able to track it that way, rather than maybe some integration of the technology they adopted from Nimble, where you'd be able to track things like moving your hands. And if I do recall correctly, Leap was also advertising the ability to use something like a pen instead of your hands as a form of input. So it'd just be nice to see if we can get a bit more information on that front. But all in all, the input solutions from the part of Oculus are, well, disappointing at best. I mean, anything that isn't a brain-computer interface for virtual reality, in my opinion, is a waste or pardon, I need to pull myself back right there. It's not necessarily a waste of time, but it is going to be an eventual dead end from a technological perspective. So I personally don't really see myself investing too much time in trying out all these bizarre exotic solutions that aren't really going down to the core situation of trying to gather the user intent. Maybe that's just me, but at the same time, I think that the good old buddy, the Xbox controller here, is going to be a much more popular input solution, especially now that it's coming bundled in for virtual reality, rather than these two half-moon looking things. And continuing onwards on the level of negativity, I'm also still not too happy about the fact that they're still being vague on some of the details we really want to hear. I did not hear a number for their FOV. I still have not heard any details about their lens quality. I'm not really seeing any of that. And admittedly, no one's really seeing it yet, since no one's really tried out the CV1. We're going to have to wait a few more days till E3 for that. But it's still disappointing to see that they're not just plain old saying, we have 110 degrees, or we have 120 degrees. And for that matter, I'm kind of disappointed we didn't get a bit of Carmack in there. I mean, maybe it's just me because I really dig the game developer side, and Carmack is a god amongst men for us programmers. But yeah, it's just kind of disappointing to see that he wasn't really present at the show. I guess this was a bit more of a press thing, and that's really not much of a shindig. Although it could also just be that he doesn't pull any of his punches at all, and they probably didn't want him really spoiling the Oculus announcement in the middle of it by just talking about all the things that they want to improve rather than what they already currently have. So yeah, all in all, I don't really think we learned all that much new. I'm really happy about the Xbox integration, though. I really do think that is a very good move on their part, and it's definitely going to open up virtual reality as a bigger platform. I mean, now we're going to have Sony and Project Morpheus on the PlayStation side. If you have an Xbox and a gaming PC, or either of the two, or some form of Windows 10 PC, now you'll have an opportunity to try out virtual reality as well, and even have two controllers if you buy the CV1 as well and already have an Xbox One. So that sounds like another good opportunity. I'm curious as to whether or not people will be able to play on their Xbox and somebody else be playing on virtual reality using their PC. That'd be an interesting integration. And all in all, it sounds like we're going to have a lot more devices that we're going to be able to wield virtual reality on alongside of our mobile VRs and desktop VR situations. Well guys, I guess at this point I'm just rambling on here. So, as a whole, the conference was a bit uninspiring in terms of virtual reality hype. I mean, I came into it relatively hyped since Palmer Luckey dropped in a little line along the lines of the only difference between reality and virtual reality is the amount of data. That kind of sounded a bit like a quote from Sword Art Online Season 2, Episode 1. That was kind of a bit of an intermix between Asuna and Kirito, where Asuna was waiting for Kirito to show up during their date, questioning what's the difference between the virtual world and the real world, only to have Kirito respond to that by saying the amount of data, that's it. And yeah, it felt almost kind of like that's a reference to that, but at the same time, I'm almost starting to think that that might also have been a reference to any VR work, since I kind of think I might have heard something similar in Snow Crash rather recently, and I haven't really gotten into Neuromancer, so I wouldn't know about that one, but I also recall Ready Player One making a few jabs along that kind of data line, but yeah. For now, let's just say that my projections for a lot of things in regards to virtual reality's progression are certainly not really being accelerated by any degree. At this stage, I'd say virtual reality, for those of us in the SAO crowd, probably won't really be reaching the exciting level until maybe the early 2020s, around the time that SAO itself actually came out within the narrative context. Maybe technologically we'll start hearing some nice things sometime this year in regards to EEG and EMG technology being used for prosthetics. Sometime in the early 2020s, maybe late 19s, 18s for this decade. So we might be hearing some nice things on that end, but that's just me speculating in regards to our current level of technological progress in that area and my own research into it. But yeah, let's just say that we're not going to be hearing very much about full VR gaming on the level of SAO anytime soon. But for now, we do have another interesting virtual reality platform to look forward to. I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody to not buy virtual reality at this stage. I am not going to tell somebody that it's going to be like SAO, but I can definitely say that virtual reality has its own independent merits at its current level of technology that some people will certainly be able to appreciate if they come to it with an open mind. I'm not going to specify too much about those since I have a few other videos planned to cover that, but let's just say that there are a few things that you might never want to do without virtual reality again in the near future. Excuse me. Well, everyone, thank you very much for watching this video. Sorry for the lack of any moving stuff here, aside from a few little clicks here and there. There really isn't all that much to show today, aside from watching the Twitch stream, which I recommend you check out if you want to get the full breadth of it. You might want to skip the first 30 minutes or so, since it's mostly just the pre-release waiting period. I remember waiting in my car. Oh god, it was horrible. I decided to just veer off to the side of the road, kind of relax there, just park and wait until the Oculus conference started since I really wanted to hear it. Don't do like me, guys, but yeah. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. This has been Marcus Dahl, logging out.